Hello and welcome to Samuel Ramey Behind the Curtain, where we'll be hearing anecdotes about Samuel Ramey's life and career off stage or behind the curtain. I hope you enjoy this series.
Hi there.
We're back.
Been a while.
Yes, we've had a lot of projects going on at the house.
Yes. We had a new kitchen. We had a kitchen remodel done. We have a brand new kitchen now.
Yep, it's great. And the remodel was actually not too bad.
No, went very fast. 3 weeks from demolition until finish.
Till almost finished.
Till almost.
There were just a couple little things.
Right.
But yeah, we have a pantry now.
Yes, that's right.
Which is excellent.
Yeah, it's great having a pantry.
Now we're having a bedroom made into a closet.
That's sort of
not even half done,
yeah,
because they're missing
in the works
some parts. So we had a whole new HVAC system put in.
Oh, that's right. Yes, that was just a couple of days ago. So
yeah, so it's just we've had a lot going on. We've had a lot of workmen around. It hasn't been ideal for doing any interviews, but it's such a nice day out today. We decided we'd give it a try.
Yeah.
We're going to answer some questions today that many of you have written in, or try to answer them.
Right.
You're going to hear some noise in the background because our dogs are out here. So
yeah, and besides, there's just noise on a nice day.
Yes. Okay, so the first question.
Okay.
Mr. Ramey.
Mr. Ramey.
Maestro. He makes me call him Maestro. Have I mentioned that before?
No, I don't.
Can you talk a little about your recording with Sarah Vaughan?
Oh, yes. Yes, many years ago, my agent called and said that Hallmark Cards had called, and at the time, every year they were making a CD of Christmas music, and and selling it with their cards. So my agent said that they had called and expressed an interest in having me involved in one of these recording sessions to do some Christmas music. And I remember the gentleman who came from Hallmark Cards. I met with him. He actually lived in Chicago, so at that time I was singing every year practically in Chicago. So we organized that I could do this recording while I was performing in Chicago. And the way they did it was that this gentleman went to Utah, Salt Lake City, and recorded all of the choral parts with the Mormon Tabernacle Choir and the Mormon Tabernacle Choir Orchestra. Recorded all the music, and then he went to Los Angeles and recorded Sarah Vaughan, and she and I had a duet on this recording, and of course she sang some numbers too. So he went there, and he said he walked into the studio where she was to record. When she came in, she said, "Where's Sam?" Of course, I wasn't there. I was going to do my recording of my parts in Chicago. So we actually never met, even though we sang a duet on this recording. We actually never met.
That's too bad.
Yeah, it was.
It was nice that she was expecting you, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was very nice. Very nice. Very nice.
Well, I remember a story that our good friend Scott Baseman, who just passed away a few months ago. But he said when he was in college, he was a huge Samuel Ramey fan, as was his friend Amy. And they went to the local not the record store, they went to the Hallmark store to get your Hallmark CD, and there was only one left, and they actually were fighting over who was going to be able to get that CD.
Yes.
He also wanted to wear your fur coat someday, but that didn't happen.
I don't even wear my fur coats anymore. I'm afraid to wear them in Kansas.
Yeah, you never know. What would the reaction be?
Yes, exactly.
All right.
Next question.
Next question. Did you ever meet Anna Moffo?
Anna Moffo. Yes, I did meet her once. I was always a big fan of hers. I can remember hearing her on the Met broadcasts. I remember a Traviata that was just fantastic. And of course, she was an absolutely gorgeous woman. But I met her. She was married after she retired from singing. She was married to, I can't remember his name, unfortunately, but was at the time, I don't know if he still is, he was the head of Madison Square Garden, the sports complex in New York City. And I used to go down to Madison Square Garden, and I knew that I had a contact there that I would call and see if they needed anybody to sing the national anthem. So I went down to Madison Square Garden a few times to sing. I sang the national anthem for some New York Rangers hockey games and New York Knicks basketball games. And so one time I sang, I think it was at a hockey game, and they asked me if I would like to, I didn't, I was always, I could stay for the games, but I almost always didn't. I didn't want to fight the crowds at the end. But they asked me this one time if I would stay and then go up to this special room at the intermission interval.
Halftime or whatever,
Yeah,
depending on the game.
right. And so I did, and I went up there, and the gentleman who was the head of Madison Square Garden was there, and there was his wife, Anna Moffo. So that was my one time of meeting Anna Moffo.
And was she as lovely in person?
Yes, she was very lovely.
Oh, here's an interesting question. And actually, we have a little story about this question, don't we?
Okay.
Somebody asked if you have some East Asian ancestry because they felt that you looked a little East Asian.
No, I don't. I don't have any East Asian background at all.
You're French and
French
Irish
and Irish.
background.
But
this isn't the first time that he's been asked that. We were in Los Angeles walking up and down Rodeo Drive, and we went into the Valentino store. And there was a Japanese lady who was working there. And she asked you if you were part Japanese because she thought you looked a little Japanese.
I don't see it, but okay.
I think it's the Attila makeup.
Maybe my face is conformed to the Attila makeup, perhaps.
You have talked about before how you've gotten autographs from celebrities that you've seen in the airport or wherever.
Right.
Have any celebrities ever asked you for your autograph?
Well, I have sort of a funny thing with, if you might know the name in the movie business, the name Sam Ramey. Not spelled the same as mine, I think it's spelled Raimi. He's a movie director. Spider-Man, yes, he did the Spider-Man movies. And Xena the Jungle, was that
Xena Warrior Princess.
Xena Warrior Princess on television years ago. He was the director of that. But this goes back to, I was singing, I believe it was Attila actually, in San Francisco, at the opera in San Francisco. And I remember after a performance, went to a restaurant, it was across the street, a restaurant that lots of people go to after performances at the opera. And I remember walking through the restaurant, and I heard just somebody, as I passed, somebody say, "Oh, that's Sam Ramey." And so I went and so was sitting at a table, and after a few minutes, this young gentleman came over to the table and was sort of nervous, and he said, "Excuse me, are you Sam Ramey, the film director?" And I at that time, I had never heard of Sam Ramey, the film director, and I said, "No, I'm Sam Ramey, the opera singer." So that was my first knowledge of Sam Ramey. Well, this went on for a while. I think the next time was was it at the White House?
Oh, when Steven Spielberg.
Yes, we were at the White House. We had gone for the Kennedy Center honors, and we were standing around with Cheryl Milnes and his wife, and we looked over and saw standing all by himself over, just looking around, was Steven Spielberg, the movie director. So we decided to go over and talk to him. So we went over, and Cheryl introduced himself, and Cheryl Milnes, and I said, "Hi, I'm Sam Ramey," and he said, "Oh, Sam Ramey? My kids love your DVDs. They watch your DVDs all the time." So I said, "Oh, here we go again." I said, "No, I'm not Sam Ramey, the film director. I'm Sam Ramey, the opera singer." And so he said, "Oh, my mistake." And I said, "Well, would you mind me using this mistake?"
He gave him the okay to tell the story.
Yes, he gave me the okay. And then one other time, I was doing a production at the Metropolitan Opera of Prokofiev's War and Peace. And I was at the theater one night for a performance. I was in my dressing room being made up, I think, and I saw this gentleman walking by the room looking in, and he'd walk by again and look in. Well, finally I was finished, and he knocked on the door, and he came in and said, "My boss would like an autographed picture of you." He was actually being a super in the production, and he said, "My boss is Sam Ramey, the film director, and he gets mixed up with you a lot." And I said,
It goes both ways.
So, yes, it does. So anyway, the next performance, I brought a picture for him to give to Sam Ramey, the film director. So that's my one time of giving my autograph to a celebrity.
You have talked about different people with whom you've worked, little anecdotes about performances and things.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about your fans? Do you have any anecdotes about fans, or can you say a little something about them?
Well, I do have a lovely group of fans. They formed a fan club of mine in Vienna, and it's a club of ladies, and they were very dedicated, or still are. I mean, I'm still in contact with a number of them, and they used to, fly all over Europe to wherever I was singing to, and there would usually be a group of them at performances, and some of them even came to the America to see performances there. And so it was really nice. It was always nice to see them, and it's nice to hear from them via email or Christmas cards, etc.
You've always had a lot of fans waiting at the stage door at the Met,
Hmm.
but I have never seen so many people waiting in line for your autograph in Vienna. I remember waiting
Yeah.
for you for hours
Well, yeah,
after a performance.
the Viennese opera fans are
Very dedicated.
very dedicated to their favorite artists. There's always a big crowd of them at the stage door at the Staatsoper after performances. They have it in the foyer. When you first walk in the stage door, they have a room off to the side where they have a table, and the artists can sit there and usually for an hour or so and sign autographs. It's nice. It's very nice.
Do you have any favorite films?
Oh, I have lots of. I think if I can remember them, all of my favorite films are films from way in the past. My favorite film is, I think my favorite film is Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, with Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton and George Segal and what's the other girl's name? I can't remember. Fantastic. I always thought that would make a fantastic opera.
We
Um,
haven't actually been to the movies since before COVID.
no, we haven't.
It's been a really long time. We binge watch seasons of things on,
Yes,
various paid
right,
things.
right. But yeah, we haven't been to the movies.
You always
We
liked,
talked about going to the new James Bond movie,
I know,
didn't
I want to
we?
go see the new,
Yeah.
I've seen every single James Bond movie ever.
I
So,
think have. I think I've seen them all as well at
we'd,
some point.
we'd better go
Some.
see it.
Yes, we.
Put on our masks.
Yep.
We're all vaccinated. Um, you've always talked about Steve McQueen and how you liked Steve McQueen films.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite Steve McQueen film?
The Thomas Crown Affair. The Thomas Crown Affair. They remade it later, but it wasn't as good.
He never likes remakes.
No, they can't. Yeah, they can't better the first one. Midnight Cowboy is also another one I favorite. I like Dustin Hoffman as well.
You like depressing movies.
I like I like
Good acting.
good acting.
Good
Yes,
scripts.
good scripts and good acting. Yes.
I like A Room with a View.
Oh yeah, that's a beautiful movie, right? Florence, wasn't it in Florence? No, maybe not.
Various places in,
Tuscany.
yeah, and it was very funny too.
Hmm.
So. And the music. Kyrie Kanawa was,
O mio bambino
yeah,
cara.
they, Caro, yeah, they used her recording um, and she's one of my favorite sopranos, so I loved that, of course. Hey, that actually leads us right into another question, talking about some other great singers.
Hmm.
Well, we might as well talk about Kyrie Kanawa a little bit.
Yeah.
What have you performed with her?
Let me see. If I can remember, it's been a long time. I think the first time I worked with her was for. Oh no, it was my debut at the Paris Opera, actually, in La Boheme. She was Mimi, and I think that's the first time that was in the spring of 1979.
Hmm?
I think that's the first time I worked with her. Then after that, I did um, Marriage of Figaro recording with her. Um, then I did at Covent Garden in London. I did Don Giovanni with her. She was Don Elvira. And was she Don Elvira or Don Anna?
She was one of the Donnas.
Pretty sure she was Elvira. Yeah, she was Elvira. And then I think I sang Figaro with her at the San Francisco Opera as well. So yeah, did some concerts here and there too. Where we were on together. But, yeah.
What about?
Don Carlo.
Oh yeah.
Don Carlo at the Lyric in Chicago, right?
That was the first time I saw you perform live. I
Okay.
had gone to Chicago for graduate school at Northwestern and got the really cheapest subscription. Yeah, nosebleed seat at Lyric Opera, and saw you and Curie and Don Carlo. Could hear the prompter yelling out lines all the way up in the nosebleed seats. Which I found, at first I didn't know. I'm like, what is that?
Yes.
Is that all you're going to say about that?
Yeah.
Okay. Kurt Moll.
Kurt Moll, yes, fantastic bass. Fantastic. I think the first time I worked with Kurt Moll was, yeah, I think it was my debut in Vienna. It was Don Giovanni, and it was like sort of an audition performance, I believe. They just hired me to come and do this one performance of Don Giovanni. And I think it was in 1981. And Kurt Moll was the commendatore. And I remember he came, knocked on my dressing room door, and he said, Mr. Ramey, said, we should rehearse a little bit the sword fight. He said, it should be really slow. He said, we shouldn't move too fast. So anyway, we rehearsed the sword fight, and it went very well.
Awesome.
But I think I also sang with him in Hamburg sometime in the 1980s in Don Carlo. I think he was the Inquisitore. And what else? Then Don Giovanni. I think we did Don Giovanni a few times. I know at the Metropolitan, and we did the new production in 1991, I should say. He was the dogs. He was the commendatore for that as well. So yes, he was a wonderful guy and a fantastic singer. Wow, what a voice!
Lucia Pop.
Lucia Pop. I think the only opera I don't think I ever performed opera on stage with Lucia Pop. On the recording of Don Giovanni, I mean of Nozze di Figaro with Curie, she was the Susanna. She is the Susanna on that recording. So I worked with her for that, and we sang at some concerts here, and every now and then we would be on a concert together. The Creation with Maestro Muti and Lucia Pop and Francisco Araiza. Yeah. That's on YouTube, I think.
Did you like working with her?
Yes, she was delightful and beautiful, wonderful singer. Yeah.
José Van Damme. You never sang with him.
No, I never had the pleasure to work with him, but I met him a couple of times. I remember being backstage at a rehearsal of Don Carlo in Salzburg, and he was rehearsing. He was singing Filippo in that, but he ended up canceling, and Ferruccio Furlanetto stepped in. But anyway, I met him backstage for that, and I met him also at the stage door at the Met. We arrived at the theater at the same time he was there. I think he was rehearsing Tales of Hoffmann one year, and we just met at the stage door and shook hands again. But he was very nice. I went to my debut at the opera in Brussels because José Van Damme is Belgian, and my debut there was a recital at the Opera House. And I went to do the recital, and I had a message there, a telex, from Jose Van Damme wishing me the best of luck for my debut at the Brussels Opera.
Oh, that was
Which is
very thoughtful.
very nice, very
Yeah.
thoughtful.
I've heard he's a very nice man.
Yeah, I have too.
Thomas Allen.
Sir Thomas, yes. Um, well, also, my Paris opera debut, the La Boheme with Kirita Kanawa, he was Marcello in that production. And I think that was, I had met him some years before, or around the same time actually, in Glyndebourne. When I went there, when I made my debut as Figaro, he was there doing Don Giovanni. And I remember meeting him then. And then we did Bohème together, and he was also the Marriage of Figaro recording that I did, which Kirita Kanawa and Lucia Pop, he is the Count on that recording.
Mm-hmm.
And also I think we were on some concerts together in London, I remember. But that Bohème was the only time, I think was the only time we were
In an opera?
in an opera together, I think. My memory's not as good as.
Well, you've performed just a few operas.
Yeah, I had a few, with a few singers.
With just a few singers. Like, who are some of the singers you worked with that maybe you became good friends with?
Well, the first name that pops up in that would be Marilyn Horne. Um, she and I first worked together. We did Rinaldo, a production of Rinaldo with the Houston Grand Opera in 1975, I think. And this was sort of a rehearsal for the production we later did that we first did at the Summer Festival in Ottawa, Canada, and then the production went to the Met and was my Metropolitan Opera debut. But this production in Houston was sort of the precursor of that with Marilyn, because Frank Corsaro also directed that production. And and Marilyn, and not long after that, my agent Matthew Epstein brought Marilyn to a performance that I sang of Rossini's Contori at the City Opera in New York. And after she heard me sing that, she told my Matthew that she was going to be recording, not in the not too distant future, L'Italiana in Algeri, Italian Girl in Algiers of Rossini, and that she thought she would recommend me to do the role of Mustafa for that recording. So that happily worked out, and not too long after, I think it was just a year later. Yeah, it was, because that Contori was in 1979, I believe, at New York City Opera, and the recording of Italiana was in 1980, just a year later. So that sort of was the beginning of our professional relationship and our friendship as well. And we remain really good friends.
She's been a great advocate for you.
Yes, she has. She has.
You were good friends with Jerry Hadley.
Yes, Jerry and I were very good friends. We sang a lot together over the years, and it was a tragedy that we lost him when he was still so young.
Yeah.
Big tragedy.
Yeah.
Very sad.
And Richard Stillwell was best man in our wedding.
Yes, in our wedding.
We
not
got
just
married.
Mine. Yes, Richard Stillwell and I, we performed together quite a bit over the years. Started at our professional relationship started at the New York City Opera, and we did Faust there together. We did Barbers together, Figaros together. Yeah, we sang together a lot. Still remain good friends.
What about some favorite composers? Who are your favorite composers?
Well, I think everybody would probably know who my favorite composers are. Probably my favorite, I might have to say, is Mozart. But also, of course, I love Rossini. I sang an awful lot of Rossini back in the 1980s. And well, then Verdi. Those are probably my three favorite composers. My most performed well,
Gounod.
Faust. That is my most performed role in my career, is Mephistopheles in Gounod's Faust.
And Boito, you did
Boito,
that Mephistopheles
yes. Boito,
quite a lot.
Mephistopheles, I did quite a lot as well. Attila, I did quite a lot. Don Carlo, I did quite a lot. Figaro, I did. Don Giovanni,
You didn't do German repertoire. Why is that?
I did not do. I did. I don't know. It just never. It just never appealed to me for some reason.
I think that you don't really have a particularly Germanic sounding
No,
voice.
I don't think I do either.
I know a lot of people wonder, why didn't you do Wagner and things like that?
Right, right.
I think that your career would have been shortened quite a bit if you had done Wagner, because I think that would have just been too much for your type of sound.
Yeah.
Perhaps. I don't know. What do you think?
I don't know either. Well, I remember when I went to London to do a recording of the Rake's Progress, and during a break, I was sitting at a table, and Astrid Varnay was doing Mother Goose on this Rake's Progress recording. She's a very famous Wagnerian soprano. And she was sitting and she said to me, Sam, she said, you have a beautiful lyric bass voice. It's just beautiful. And she said, don't you ever let anybody convince you to sing Wagner. And I thought that was very sage advice coming from a very famous Wagner soprano.
Right. Okay, last question.
Okay.
Are there roles that you wanted to sing but either didn't or you couldn't sing them?
Well, a role that I always wanted to do and never got the opportunity was the role of Silva in Verdi's Ernani. I love the early Verdi operas, and that was one that I missed. One of the great early Verdi bass parts that I missed out doing. I did a lot, quite a bit of excerpts of it, in concerts, but never had a chance to do the role.
What about things that you think would have been interesting to do but weren't right for your voice?
Well, great part is Iago in Otello. It's a fantastic role. I always, sort of dreamed about doing that, but just a little bit too high for me.
The tessitura, yeah.
Yeah.
Did you ever do the Count in Marriage of Figaro?
Well, no, I never did. However, at one point, I was hired to do a recording of the Count. And I flew, was to have been recorded in Vienna with Claudio Abbado conducting. And so I flew to Vienna. I think I got there flew in on a Friday, and the recording was to start the following Monday. Well, I went to bed that night, and I woke up in the night with a horrible cough. I don't know, my throat had just, I don't know, gotten so dry, I guess, but I just had this tickle in my throat that would not go away, and I coughed and coughed and coughed. Well, and of course, doctors' offices, pharmacies were closed on the weekends. So there was nothing really I could do, and I finally, I called on Monday and said that I was not well and I didn't really have the voice to do anything. I think there was just supposed to be a rehearsal on Monday. And I went to the doctor, a throat doctor, a very famous throat doctor in Vienna, Dr. Kirsten, and he scoped my vocal cords, and what had happened was from all the coughing, I had developed on one of my vocal cords a blister. It wasn't a node, because he could tell it was filled with liquid, and it was like a blister. So I had to cancel the recording because I couldn't. I had to be silent for. I canceled quite a bit of stuff after that because I went on vocal silence for a number of weeks until the blister went away. So that was my one chance to do
The count.
The count.
Well, now we have a whole other episode. We can talk about things that singers do to try and stay vocally healthy when they have to get on an airplane
Right.
and fly someplace for a performance or a recording, some
Yeah.
kind of singing.
Yeah.
All right. That's all we have for this time. We'll try to get back onto a more regular schedule.
Yes, we will.
Now that we don't have workmen at the house. Work people. Well, they were all men, actually.
Yes, they were. So workman is correct.
Yeah, okay. All right, well, we hope you enjoyed this episode, and continue to write in questions that you might have.
Yeah, nice to hear from people.
Yes.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.